Next, we go to Riverside County, California, the Greater Avenues for Independence. And making the presentations will be Dennis Boyle and Marilyn Kuhlman.
You know, as you can imagine, I have spoken about GAIN a number of times over the past couple of years. And then, like now, there are some things that are easier to talk about than others. For example, it's pretty easy for me to show that GAIN is an effective program. We have been evaluated in a very public way by the Manpower Research Development Corporation. And that has had its pluses and minuses. It held us up to very public review. In the published report, MDRC reported that Riverside GAIN was the most effective large-scale welfare-to-work program ever. One of the findings comes constantly to my mind, and that was that for each dollar that government invested in the Riverside GAIN program, there was a hard dollar return to the government treasury of $3. That's a good investment in anybody's book. It's relatively easy for me to talk about the GAIN program being significant. We've been at the forefront of the national welfare reform debate for the past many years. We've had visits from, well, a lot of presidential interest. President Bush paid us a visit. We had an emissary from the Clinton White House, and our governor, Governor Wilson, has been down a couple of times. I'm sure that President Bush's visit and the governor's visits had nothing to do with the fact that they were running for re-election at the time. It's easy for me to show that GAIN is replicable. We've had visitors from all over the world coming to see what's going on in Riverside County. We have 57 other counties in California who also have GAIN programs, and they, for the most part, chose a different course when they began their programs a decade or so ago. And over the years, they all have come to see what we're doing that's different. And they've taken something back, and many of them have replicated to a very fine degree the kind of program that we have in Riverside. And it works. It's working in those counties. They are delivering the kind of results that you would expect. Now, the thing that's most difficult for me to talk about is why our program in Riverside is novel, why it's different. Because after all, it's a government program that implemented the same law that all the other 57 counties in California implemented. And one of the reasons it's difficult to describe that novelty is because there are 100 different things that we do that are innovative. And the things that we do today are different from the things that we did last week and different from the things that we did 5 years ago. But I think at the basis of it is two things. Number one, our focus on a goal, on the goal of employment, as opposed to the process of getting people employed. We focus very firmly on that goal. And the other thing that is equally important is that we have a passionate belief that everybody that walks through our door is capable of becoming employed. Everybody is capable of taking that first very important step towards self-sufficiency. I have a letter here from one of our long-term welfare recipients, someone who had been on aid for 8 years and had been very comfortable, unfortunately, trapped in the welfare cycle. And I want to read just a paragraph from the letter. If not for GAIN and Nancy was her employment counselor, I'd still be that old Donna, stuck in the welfare rut. Instead, I'm self-confident and sure that I can do whatever I set my mind to. Yes, Nancy, you showed me that I can do anything, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, Donna's experience, Donna's success, was replicated almost 200 times last week in Riverside County. And last month, during the month of August 1996, we had 918 job placements. This year is going to be a really big year for us. In October of 1996, Riverside County is going to pass the plateau of having had 60,000 families with all their parents and all their children take that very important first step towards self-sufficiency. And the reason it happened, I think above all else, the reason that it happened was that there was a government employee in Riverside County who believed with all their heart that it could happen. And it's that belief that made a difference. That's what's different in Riverside County. and that's what makes it special.
First question from Jack.
Accepting the philosophy of putting people to work rather than into orientation or training, the test of whether that works or not depends in large measure on the available jobs in a particular community. I have the impression that you had have a big dam project that creates a huge amount of new jobs. Is that a fair reflection on the job market in Riverside?
You know, actually, it's not. One of the things that we've learned, well, we've learned a lot in the past 10 years, things that I didn't even know when we began, and we exploded a lot of myths. I'm certain that there's a point at which there are not enough jobs in the economy to handle everybody who wants one. Riverside County, during the past 10 years, in Southern California, with all the base closures, with the recession, we've been through some of the worst times in our history. And even at the height of our unemployment, we hit an unemployment rate in Riverside that exceeded 15%. We were successful in putting people to work. And actually, it's not that we put people to work. We give people the self-confidence, the belief in themselves that they can get out and get a job. And that works. And it certainly worked in that kind of an economy, which was not our best.
Tom first, and then Barbara, and Don.
I have two quick questions. After somebody is placed in employment or finds their own job, what is the process of follow-up? Do you find that they stay in those jobs? Do they fall on and off the ladder of opportunity?
The counselor makes sure that the person knows that they can, first of all, call them, and if they have a problem, they can get some advice. But yes, we do follow up, and at 30 days, our retention is about 75%. The other thing that we've learned through our internal tracking is that for those people that go off AFDC, after 2 years, 64% of them are still off AFDC. Does that answer your question? 64% are still off AFDC.
Your Larry Townsend, who I believe was one of your predecessors running this program, told me that he used to divide the new entrants into the system by thirds. About a third of the folks were going to use this system, welfare system, and be out of it pretty soon. Another third really needed some serious help in terms of getting jobs. And about another third were never really going to work. Is that an accurate reflection of new entrants into the
Well, I think it's a little
system?
bit simplistic. It's hard to categorize people into groups like that. The past working history and the skill level of a person does not necessarily predict whether they will get a job, because it has to be something that they want to do and that they believe is the right thing to do. And as far as a third, probably a third are fairly easy to work with. They've already got tools that they can use. I wouldn't say that there are a third, though, that will not get jobs. What we believe is that there is a job for everyone coming through our doors.
We have three pending questions, first from Barbara, Don, and Dick.
Two quick questions. You're training people for $974, preparing them per individual. What are you preparing them for that will make enough wages to pay for the cost of child care and transportation, since it appears to go away once they have a job? And the second really brief question, your CD with work ethic songs, could you hum a few bars of one of those?
I'm afraid I can't do that last. As far as what we're training them for, many of the people do take entry-level jobs. Our average wage for the fiscal year last year was $5.73. However, about 80% of those who get jobs initially stay on AFDC, and as such, they get the child care disregard. We have a very good work incentive program in California, one being the supplemental child care program. In other words, if their child care is higher than the disregard, they can get that supplemented. Also, after they go off AFDC, they can get child care for, I believe it's 2 years now, under the new law.
You know, one of the important things to look at, too, is that it's not our goal to get people immediately off of aid. I don't think it's realistic to take someone who has been on their couch for 8 years and immediately put them out where they're going to be self-sufficient. What we try to do is get them on that first rung of the ladder of success. And if you take a look at our program, the demographics of our clientele, and you look at people who have been on aid for 5 years or more, in Riverside County right now we've got that down to where less than 10% of our population has been on aid for 5 years or more.
Two quick final questions, and hopefully two quick responses. First, Don, secondly, Dick, and finally, Dick.
You've emphasized self-confidence and belief in themselves. How does that work with the so-called hardcore?
As I said, I don't know if there is a hardcore.
Well, there is a group that...
I mean, if you're categorizing them as to the length of time on AFDC or something like that, they really, most people do want to work. They have anxieties, they have apprehensions, which manifests itself in resistance. However, I think once they realize that this is real, that they are expected to go to work, that we have high expectations for them, and we don't give up on anybody, it eventually clicks with them that they want to do it.
Well, I don't mean hardcore in that people don't want, but because of a combination of enormous
Yes,
circumstances.
some people do have more barriers than others. We
We
don't really look at the barriers as being complete impediments to getting a job.
You have to start out thinking that everybody can succeed, and there's a psychological basis for that. It's called the Pygmalion effect, and it really works. I saw someone get employed just 2 weeks ago, a young woman who was a former drug addict who was covered with tattoos and had lots and lots of body piercings and whatnot. And as she became more successful, she shed most of that and covered up her tattoos. Unfortunately, she still has a pierced tongue, but that doesn't appear to be getting in her way.
The last question from Dick.
What happens after a person has successfully gone through the program, gotten a job, loses the job? Is there any penalty attached to their coming back onto welfare?
No, not at all. In fact, I'm not in the first job that I started out at, and we expect a lot of people are going to go through a series of steps. So we continue that confidence building, and what's neat about this is that when someone loses that job, they have the confidence to go out and start all over again. They're not dependent on us.
So when the Clinton representative visited you, they didn't accept that aspect of your program?
Congressman Downey.